Welcome in, Big Blue Nation, to another episode of the Cats Talk podcast. Your Kentucky Wildcats fight it out at Kroger Field on Saturday, come up short against the Georgia Bulldogs, the number one team in the nation, lose 13-12. Tyler, there was a bunch of up and downs throughout this game. Give me some of your key takeaways.
Yeah, Cam. Look, you kind of hit it on the head. We went into, Georgia came into our house, number one team in the nation here. We came off of a bad, terrible, horrendous, whatever word you want to use to fill in the blank there, game against the Gamecocks last week. To follow it up with a game against Georgia and to come within 1 point of the game. It doesn't matter if it was 12-13 or 34-33. I thought that was key here for us to bounce back in some sort of respectable way. Again, you never want to lose a game here, but at least we came close here with Georgia, a game that we marked at the beginning of the season as a loss, as a clear loss. It's nice to see that we have some respect on our name again. Look, I think there's two main turning points of this game that cost us, and we'll break them down a little bit more here. But I think it comes down to the turnovers. We fumbled the ball and lost it. They fumbled the ball. They recovered their own fumbles, and then touchdowns. We can't win a game off just field goals here. Georgia only had one touchdown, but it was the difference in this game. There's only one team I can think of that will ultimately win a game because of field goals, and that's Washington Commanders against the New York Football Giants. Unless you're them, you're not winning a game off just field goals, especially not the number one team in the nation here. So those are, I think, the biggest turning points on the game on my end here. We can break down so much more here. Why don't we just jump into it, Cam? And what are your thoughts about Brock Vandagriff now? We played 3 games of the season. What was his play like?
Yeah, I think it's still definitely early to talk about Brock. Against South Carolina, I think you saw just how uncomfortable he was. Offensive line really took a step forward in this game. Georgia's defensive line, it's not as good as South Carolina's, but they still got guys that are going to end up playing on Sundays. So it was good to see them bounce back in pass protection. They weren't great, but they were definitely a lot better than the previous week. It's not saying all that much as we had broke it down. Marcus Cox had that 5 overall grade the previous week. And then you saw South Carolina play this weekend. They took LSU to the final snap, lost on a missed kick. So that was go to overtime. They lost by 3. So I think we saw that maybe, Kentucky wasn't as bad as we had played the previous week, and then South Carolina might just be better than they were. But getting back to Brock, he played well. The decision-making definitely has to speed up. That's where I think most of the concerns are. I kind of relate it somewhat towards Sam Howell last year with the Washington Commanders, where there's not a good – the offense line is not good, but it's also not as bad as he makes it either with his decision-making. And we have weapons on the outside to be able to get the ball out. There was multiple times in this game where Brock sits and holds the ball. I'm sure we'll get to it later. That fumble, he sits there in the pocket for 2 seconds. Tucker Caddis doesn't block either of the 2 guys coming off the edge. He sits there, drifts back. Finally decides to start the windup of throwing the ball. Doesn't have 2 hands on the ball. Knocks it out. Fumble. Georgia recovers, and it's going to be their first play on offense on our side of the 50. So, unfortunately, you want to take positives away from this game with Brock, but the one play that you kind of remember and that's kind of stuck in your head is a negative that kind of allowed Georgia to win this game.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point there with Brock. I forget the commentator's name, so I'm not going to put a name to it, but I'm going to quote someone here. You have about 2.5 seconds to throw the football in football here. It's before the defensive line crashes down. Brock needs to be a little more decisive here. Georgia was getting through. They were giving him the time to throw if you make the decision, but he was hesitant. I especially think of that fumble. He looked downfield, he was hesitant, and then he stuck his arm out, and by then it was already too late. The ball was flying backwards. Obviously, we know what happens next. Georgia recovers. And that's a lost possession. You can't be losing possessions like that in college football, especially not against the number one team in the nation, especially in your house. You can't do that. Look, I think there's some good takeaways here. I think the running game really came in and stepped up a little bit. We had 284 yards in total offense here. Of that, 170 of that came on the ground. So I mean that's a plus for us. Our run game's there, but to your point, I think that decision making, I think if it gets a little bit better, which hopefully going into next week, which we'll break down here in a little bit, we'll get some more confidence behind it. But if we can get that passing game going, I think we can have a well balanced offense, and that will lead to a lot more wins down the road for us, and really make a good push for the second half of the season here, or the back half of the season here. Breaking down into some other points here, tell us about the field goal with 9 seconds left in the first half here. What were your thoughts with us taking that move here? What's going on with Coach here?
Yeah, I mean, Coach Stoops has always been the conservative type. He's from that old school brand of coaching, not necessarily with the analytics on, taking those chances. But 1st and 10, ball's at the 14. We have no timeouts. So, I mean, I get there's understanding, but at the same time, you're playing number 1 Georgia, 1st and 10 from the 14. You have playmakers outside, Dane Key, Berrien Brown, and Jamari Macklin. I think it kind of just speaks to how much lack of trust there is right now with Brock Vandegrift, that he didn't trust him to get that ball out, or didn't trust him to make a throw past the end zone or in the end zone. So, I mean, he wanted to make sure we went into the half with the lead, made sure we got the 3 points. I personally would have liked to have seen a shot to the end zone. I mean, what do you figure? The longest plays in college football used to take, 6-7 seconds? As long as you make sure that ball's in the end zone or that ball's on the out-of-bounds line, something of that nature, you're not getting tackled in bounds, you still got enough time to run Alex on the field and hit that 3. So, I mean, it's not the biggest takeaway of the game, but it kind of is a precursor for things that happen later.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think with 9 seconds left, that gives you at least one play to roll around. And, let's say Georgia blitzes right up the middle and you have to throw the ball away. You're in the end zone. You have such leeway by throwing into your end zone to throw the ball away. Like, I'm not saying that Brock would have had the wherewithal to throw the ball away. Obviously, we're still seeing to see that trust, and maybe that's what Coach Stoops is waiting on as well, to see what trust we can have in Brock. But there's plenty of time to make sure you make the right decision. You can look around, you can move around, you can throw the ball away. You have a lot of leeway. And the worst thing that can happen, the worst thing that should happen is an incomplete pass or an overthrow out of the end zone. You kick the field goal anyway. I think it is telling that with 9 seconds left, they just kicked the field goal. Granted, and look, I think ultimately got us 6 points to end the half, gave us the lead here. But that could have been the difference. Georgia won by a point. What if we were to get the touchdown and then Georgia had to score 2 touchdowns to win the game? That's a huge difference in this game here. Maybe they had to go score a touchdown, then they had to get the onside. You never know what could have happened from that one play. To your point, Coach Stoops is a little conservative. Maybe that's on coaching a little bit too, just be a little more aggressive in the future here, especially in those tough games where you have to have it. Moving on here, we got Alex Rayner with some things that was going on in the game with him. Tell us about him.
Yeah, I mean, Alex has just transferred over from Georgia State 2 years ago, so this is his second year in the blue and white. He's from Georgia. His sister goes to the University of Georgia. He comes out, goes 4 for 4 on kicks, sets a school record with a 55-yarder. Might have been good from another 2 to 3 yards if we're pushing it. So I think that kind of shows, they have trust in him. It's good to see that the kicking game is back to being a reliable point for this team. I think that's what makes the 4th down decisions and play calling later in the game such an obstacle to overcome, because you knew that you felt good about Rayner hitting that and walking off the field, hoisting the guy from Georgia whose sister goes to Georgia, hoisting him on everybody's shoulders, walking off the field. I mean, it was a feel-good story that never got to happen.
Yeah, Alex Rayner, the feel-good story that never was, unfortunately. Hopefully in the future we can get him on a game-winning field goal against a competitive team here. Maybe sends us to the playoffs. I don't know. That'd be great. We'll make him a feel-good story here soon. So, but let's dive back into the running game here. We had 2 running backs on our team who were putting up good numbers here. We averaged Demi Sumo Karnbe, who had 22 rushes, 98 yards, 4.5 yards a carry. And then you had Wilcox here, who had 9 rushes for 43 yards, 4.8 yards a carry. Look, Brock even had a couple rushes in there that were pretty good too, including a 17-yard scamper here. I think overall, look, our run game is there. I think there's some benefits for having that run game. The run game can convert or can transition game to game. We've obviously proven that we can do it against tough defenses here. I see this kind of being the identity for our team long term this season. And what are your thoughts here going on with the run game?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we thought coming into the season, this was going to be, the weak point of this offensive line was going to be run blocking. So far, it's been the best. It's been their biggest strength. I mean, pass blocking, they've struggled. We were out two scholarship running backs last week. Chip Trainum still has yet to take a carry for Kentucky. Jason Patterson, who has looked good in both the 2 previous games, was out again. And Demi really just shouldered the load. He's kind of just put the team on his back and said, all right, guys, I'm going to keep us in this game for as long as I can. Really kept us in the game until coaches kind of took the ball out of his hands, unfortunately. And Jamarian Wilcox, we talked about him over the offseason. He came in, got a chance to shine, and he did. I mean, this running game was really good, including Brock. When Brock does get out on the move, he's slow to make that switch from passer to runner, but once he does, you can tell he's got athleticism. That 17-yard scamper, that was on a 3rd down, got that first down there for us, kept that drive going. We ended up scoring 3 on that drive, so that was a huge 17-yard pickup that you mentioned. This running game's been very good, and it's going up the last 2 weeks against 2 very good defensive line and linebacker units. And you're without who was supposed to be your number 1 guy, and this week you're out second B, maybe, in Jason Patterson. So I took nothing but positives away from this running game. This offensive line really, after getting, kind of clowned on all week before this game, they really stepped up. They kept us in this game. Could they have pass blocked better? Yes. Of course you can. I mean, no matter how good your offensive line is, it could have always been better. I think even, the best NFL teams are going through stuff like that. Look at the Kansas City Chiefs this week. They've got 3 great offensive linemen. The one that didn't is the one that, got benched, was holding from the bench. So, I mean, we're always going to have offensive line problems, but this running game was really solid, kept us in the game. Unfortunately, kind of took the ball out of their hands at the end of the game. I think that's what ultimately cost us.
Do you think so? I know that football is going toward more of a quarterback-driven lead here, both in the pros and as college quarterbacks get better and better. It feels like it feels like they're trying to go more quarterback-centric in college sports as well. Do you think that we hit on it a little bit in the first half? Felt like we were losing trust in Brock that we. For 9 seconds left, we just kicked a field goal, but in the second half, almost putting it in his hands. Is that coach trying to find trust in Brock, or is that what are we trying? Why don't we continue to run the ball and go downfield and run the clock out, or try to score a touchdown, or whatever the case may be? It feels like we're forcing the ball into Brock's hand, but we're not showing him enough trust in the first half to continue. I'm confused of what the thought process is here.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now we're just not really. We're not running the ball in advantageous spots, usually. It feels like we always run the ball when it is a expected run situation, when the defense is crowding the box, when there's 7 to 8 guys in the box. I feel like that's when we decide to run the ball. And we've still been getting, like you said, 4.5 per carry on fronts like that. So, I mean, I think we just have to – I don't know how much they trust Brock to make changes to the line of scrimmage. I don't know where they're at with him on that basis. But I feel like that's kind of where the biggest fall off is right now. Because we got to be able to get up to fronts like that and see, hey, man, we've been running the ball down their throat. They only got 6 guys in the box. I know we have a pass play call here. I'm just handing it off to Demi. We're going to pick up 5 and make this 2nd and 5. So I'd much rather take a shot on 2nd and 5 and get to 3rd and 5 rather than take a shot on 1st and 10 and then put yourself in 2nd and 10 and now you have to pass. And especially against the Georgia defense, if they know that you have to pass the ball, they're going to pin their ears back. It makes it that much harder on your offensive line who's already struggling to pass protect as is. So, I mean, I think that's kind of where we put ourselves into position at, especially on that final drive where we ultimately punted. We ran the ball on 1st down, which Georgia knew we were going to do. We get it to 2nd and 8. we throw a pass. We get to 3rd and 8, we throw a pass. Now we're at 4th and 8. Now you're kind of left at a spot where you have to pick. Mark Stoops, I mean, we knew he was going to punt that ball. Mark Stoops is a conservative coach. You knew he was going to punt that ball, try and trust his defense to get the stop on 3 and get the ball back with his offense. But, I mean, you're still looking at your offense hasn't been able to move the ball in consistent chunks throughout the game. Why would you we'll dive into that later. But, I mean, I think it's more of a lack of trust with Brock at the line of scrimmage right now that's kind of holding his team back offensively.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think there's creative ways to get the run involved. You know, to continue to get the run game involved. That way, you're not you don't want to be predictable, right? We don't want to keep running the ball up the gut, and I get that. After a certain amount of times, defenses start to pick up. They'll start loading the box. You don't want to be that team. But I think there's ways that you can still be creative in the second half to where you can trust the run game a little bit more. I think running the game, or the running game in college football especially, if you can live through the run game, the passing game will open up, and I think that'll ultimately help Brock. And I understand trying to put some trust into him in the second half, but if your run game's been working all game long, I think that's where that especially in the second half when it's not been a high scoring game, you use that run game to your advantage and you tick off some clock here. You get hopefully some good yards. You go to 2nd, 3rd down. You trust that your team's going to get the first down, especially when you're averaging between your two running backs here, over 4.5 yards a carry, and then you have Brock who, when given the right opportunity, he has proven that he can run for chunk yards, and I think that's the key to success in college football, is my opinion. I think there's ways that we can be more creative. Maybe it's jet sweeps, maybe it's more option plays, maybe it's some RPOs. I don't know how much faith they have with Brock right now with the RPOs, but I think that'd be a great way to be a little more creative with the run. Especially if you're on the conservative side here, and make sure you hand the ball off more times than you throw it. That would be my idea behind a run game here. Just trying to keep it more active here. I think that again, as we go into next week and some other teams going down the season, I think that's some opportunities to experiment. But we'll see what happens here in the future here. So, do you have anything else on the offense, or do you think we should hop into the defense here now, Cam?
Yeah, I mean, offense in general. You look at the box score and you just see 12 points. I want to say it was better than the 12-point performance. I mean, you get into spots where, we kicked a field goal on 4th and 2 at one point. I mean, there's just at certain times you've got to roll the dice. You've got the number 1 team in the nation on the ropes. How often can you say that? It's not something that you can say often. If they would have came out on top in this game, we all forget about that South Carolina game real quick, and everybody's back into, everybody's got a smile on their face. Kroger Field's packed for the next, 10-plus weeks. Yeah, I mean, offense was – it's hard to say that they were good when they only scored 12 points. I'll say the running game was efficient. The running game looked good. But this passing game, we still got to figure out what works with Brock, what he feels comfortable in. And I think hopefully we get another 4 quarters against Ohio kind of to figure out, try different things out. You finally get to play, no disrespect to the Bobcats, you get to play, a lesser caliber team. You finally get to, try some things out that you don't really get to try out against South Carolina and Georgia because you don't know how they're going to go. So kind of look at this next game a little bit kind of like a scrimmage almost, where you get to see what works, what doesn't, kind of test out the playbook a little bit, and then hopefully get the offense rolling and in good spirits when we head down to Oxford.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that I think there's some things we can grow on. I think there's some positives that we can take away, such as the run game. We played against a really tough team. So to your point, we're going to play the Bobcats next week. Let's see what we can do. Let's reset. We did that last week after the Gamecocks. I saw at least improvements on the roster here. Some growth here. So I think going into next week we'll have that reset game and we'll get down the stretch here. I think the Wildcats need to think of it this way. There's still a long season ahead. We're in the SEC. There's still opportunities to go out there and play ball. I wouldn't say it's far-fetched right now if there's an opportunity to still make the playoffs if we win out. It's a stretch, but there's a possibility there, especially with the new playoff setup with 12 teams going in. So Diving over into the defense here, though, I feel like Kentucky played very well. Held Georgia down to just 13 points. You really held them down to just field goals until the fourth quarter. Um, you know, the passing game beat out ours, but not by much. They ended the game with 160 yards passing. With Carson Beck at the helm, and everybody's been raving about him all offseason here. So to keep them in check as much as they did, and they kept them just to 102 yards rushing and 13 points. I thought it was a decent game on defense. I thought they held their ground. They really kept us in the game. It wasn't the defense's fault that we lost the game, in my opinion. And honestly, we can go back to that fumble that we lost on, which I think led to that field goal. Take that away, and I think we have a different ball game. Cameron, what are your thoughts with the defensive play?
Yeah, I mean, what more could you? We talked about it last week. This defense we knew was going to step up. I mean, there's too many talented players on this team for this defense to act like they did last week against South Carolina. I think they were kind of shell-shocked last week when the offense was as putrid as it was, and they were just on the field forever. Time of possession was fully in Arkansas or South Carolina's favor, and they came out and showed this week. We talked about it during the offseason. We think this can be a top 10, 15 defense if everything acts right, if the offense can find ways to stay with the ball, if they can keep the ball, limit the time of possession for the other team. I mean, the defense was on the field a lot this game, too, even with a good running game. I mean, Zion Childress made his impact from jump one. He had, I think it was, 2 tackles for loss on the opening drive of the game. Had a pass deflection. He's the one that had that pick 6 called back. I do agree with the call. I know some Kentucky fans don't. In college football, that play, it's either a catch or it's an incomplete pass. Because, he catches it, goes to the ground with it. He's either down with the catch. It's not the NFL. You can't get back up after that. There is no down by contact. So it's either a catch and he's down or it's an incomplete pass. I would love to say that I disagree with the call and that, Kentucky should have won that game because that would have been our only touchdown. Just like we said last week, I wasn't sure the offense was going to score a touchdown. That was one of the only predictions I had for this game that was right. I said I thought we might get a defensive touchdown, and we were just that close. Deion Walker was great as well. He made a big impact. You see him still getting tired in the middle of the games. That'll be my only complaint throughout the entire season with Deion Walker. He's a stud. The only thing that stops himself is himself. And then Derek Jackson at linebacker was outstanding as well. Trayvon Ripka had a couple big plays. Secondary was good. Had some momentary lapses, but again, you're going against a first-round draft pick quarterback in Carson Beck, who, this is his second full year starting now. And to hold him to, 160 passing yards for Carson Beck, I mean, that's all you can ask for. We held this team to 13 points, and 3 of those points, like you said, were given to him on the Brock Vandagriff fumble. Nothing more you could ask for from this defense. This defense played well enough to win this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the Georgia Bulldogs' third down conversion rate was 5 for 13. If you told me that you're going to keep Georgia down to less than 50% on third down, I thought we would be in for a good game, especially with Kentucky converting on 9 of 16. I think that puts us in a really good spot to win the game. Keep them down to just 160 yards passing, like we said. I think that puts us in a good spot. Look, we had 2 opportunities to recover some fumbles too, and the one opportunity to get the interception. I think that's it goes back to one of my key points from the beginning here. Turnovers was one of the 2 difference makers, that and scoring a touchdown. Obviously, the defense could have scored the touchdown. Don't get me wrong, that'd been awesome. They could have been our touchdown. I'll put that responsibility back on the offense though. But the turnovers, can we recover a fumble? Can we please recover one? That's all I'm asking. I think that's the difference in this game. We recovered one of those footballs. Georgia doesn't score a field goal. They don't score one of their touchdowns. Whatever the case may be. I think that could be a difference maker. That's really my only complaint on the defense, though. I think everything else, they did as good as they probably should have against the Georgia Bulldogs at home. 13 points is still an incredible game. We can keep every team to 13 points, every ranked team to 13 points. I think that gives us a really good recipe for some success here. And then it goes back on offense and just making sure we get that done right. So, excited for that there. What were your thoughts with that last drive for Georgia as they were marching down their field? What do you think we could have done better or did we do everything we could, and that was just one of the drives that we had no control on.
Yeah, I mean, the last drive, you're kind of putting them in a situation to where, I mean, it's you have to get the stop, or else you don't get the ball back. It's just a game ender. So we got them to I think it was a second and 7, and then finally we get them to that first third down before the 2 minute goes into the 2 minute. They have a quarterback that they trust, so we stack the box expecting a run. They do a little play action boot, find 25 yards on the sideline. I think that's the difference in the two teams right now, is that they trust Carson Beck to do stuff like that. If we were in a 3rd and 2 situation right now with Georgia stacking the box, I can guarantee you we're not putting the ball in Brock's hands. We just don't have that trust. That was kind of that took off another 40 seconds that we could have gotten back. But, I mean, this defense, once again, they got another 3rd down stop there. The only other first down they got off of that was Oscar Delp fumbled, and like you said, we didn't recover it. It was going to be a 4th and 2, but no, they recovered it for a first down. I mean, I think that kind of fumbled it forward for a first down. Georgia recovers. I think that kind of speaks to how the game, ultimately came to our demise.
Yeah, look, I was as heartbroken as every other Kentucky fan. I thought it was down by contact until I saw the replay, and then they unfortunately did recover it 2 yards further for the first down. But look, we did everything we could. I mean, we kept them off the field. They only had possession for almost 25 minutes. We kept the ball for 35 minutes. Again, all the stat line for the most part was in our favor. Even the penalties, we were good with penalties all game. We only had 4 for 23 yards. They had 9 for 85. We had just a 1 turnover. We allowed just a 1 touchdown. We allowed just 100 yards in rushing and just 160 yards in passing. I mean, we kept the team in total at 262 yards. We produced 284 yards with most of that on the ground, which is great. If we could just get a little more passing going, cover a fumble. Like, we're not asking for too much. Am I asking for too much to get one of these? Like, one of them. That's all we need, right? That's the difference in this game.
We've forced 5 fumbles in the past 2 weeks, and we haven't recovered a single one. So you might be asking for too much to just recover one of them, because right now.
Am I ridiculous for asking for it?
It might be ridiculous to say that, because right now we are over 5 the last 2 weeks. But I think that kind of speaks to the level this defense is at. I mean, even forcing 2 could be turnovers against a Georgia offense like this, who put up 30 plus against Clemson, who's supposed to be a good team. First off, that kind of shows a difference between SEC caliber and the ACC. Sorry, ACC, you're nowhere near the SEC. Just need to get that out there. But, I mean, we need a ball to bounce our way is kind of what we need at this moment. Like I said, hopefully just take this momentum into Ohio, beat up on the Bobcats, and then let's go steal one in Oxford. Last time we were in Oxford, we came close, a couple plays. Well, again, ball bounced the wrong way. At some point, Kentucky's going to get these balls to bounce the right way, and we're going to steal one of these close games that we shouldn't.
Yeah, Cam, I think there's opportunities where we can still start creating our own luck down the season here. We got a favorable season ahead of us, I think, starting next week with the Bobcats. So we'll dive into that here in a second. But why don't we talk about creating our luck here on the final drive? Break down that. Just break down the final drive for us if you could.
Yeah, I mean, you're losing by 1 point to the number 1 team in the nation, a team you haven't beaten. I think it was 2009 was the last time we beat them. So, I mean, and a team that hasn't lost to anybody outside of Alabama for the past 5 seasons. So, that last drive, 1st and 10, you decide to run the ball with the stacked box. You get it to 2nd and 8. Okay, 2nd and 8, you drop back to pass. Fred Farrier, if Brock's given maybe quarter more second, or maybe if he just releases it just a tad earlier, Fred Farrier's wide open. Might have 6, honestly, so I'm not mad at the play call because it looked like it was going to work if protection was held up. But then you go into 3rd and 8, and at that time we're on Georgia's 47-yard line. There's about 3 minutes left. You've got to be thinking 4-down territory with the play calls at that moment in time. 3rd and 8, we decide to drop back again, throw another incompletion. Now it's 4th and 8. I don't know about you, but if I get one play, if you had told me coming into this game, there's one play to decide the game against Georgia, I'm signing up for it. And I'm going to take my chances. I'm going for it on 4th and 8. Say you don't get it. Okay, they get the ball back at the 47. They kick a field goal. Guess what? You're still going to have time to come back. I don't understand the punt. I don't understand the play calling before the punt. And I sure don't understand the decision to punt on 4th and 8 as well. Because the best thing that happens out of that is you get a stop, you get the ball back, maybe what? With a minute and 20 seconds? Minute 30, if at the best. And you get the ball back. I mean, they have the best punter in the nation. So you get the ball back on your 30. So you're switching for 23 yards of field position. And we end up getting the ball back with, 15 seconds? I mean, I think it kind of showed. I mean, Mark Stoops was not hesitant about it at all. He said he wouldn't change what he did. I don't know how you can lose the game and say you wouldn't change something that might have won you the game. I don't know how you double down on stupidity, but he decided to double down on it nonetheless. I disagree with the play calls leading up to that drive. It should have been 4-down territory. He said if it was 4th and 6 or 4th and 7, he probably would have went for it. What? So a yard is what you're just like, nope, we couldn't get that extra yard. That 1 yard is the problem. Yeah, it didn't make sense to me. I didn't see the potential outcome because even if Georgia scores a quick touchdown, we're down 8. It's still a one-possession game no matter how bad it goes. Didn't make sense in the time. I think a lot of Kentucky fans are feeling that because Mark Stoops, if he walks out of this game beating Georgia, everybody forgets about that South Carolina game, kind of forgets about, last season, which was kind of a disappointment. He starts to get back. But I feel like he kind of lost everything that he had gained with the first 3.5 quarters of football. People were kind of, back to being, Stoops troops, as they used to call them. People were back on Mark Stoops' side, and I feel like he kind of lost that after just a couple bad decision-making processes at the end of the game.
It's hard to pick out one moment, in my opinion, to fault coach on. It's in the heat of the moment. We're analyzing things after the game and saying, well, what if we would have done this? What if we would have done that? Well, what if they would have won the game? Would we be questioning anything? Probably not. We'd be like, okay, it worked out. Like, it's fine. We're so glad he did what he did. Like, we won the game. We beat Georgia. We'd be celebrating right now. We'd probably be drunk, celebrating with the fans. It would have been a whole different atmosphere if we would have won the game. So it's hard to. I hate judging coaches, players, or anybody in that nature based off of certain moments in the heat of the moment. But to your point, if 1 yard made the difference, what was that 1 yard really what was it really gonna change? Is it literally just based off your play call sheet that you said beforehand you're gonna have a hard cutoff at 7 yards? Like, that's what you came up with? Because, I would have, in that case, I probably would have gone for it. But I think it really is. It's just tough to break down in the heat of the moment, and I really don't know what I would have done differently in the heat of the moment. I would love to have said that, me going for it, it would have been awesome. We would have gotten the first down. We would have won the game. But, I more than likely, maybe I do go for it and we don't get the first down. Now people are questioning me as a coach. So, I think it goes both ways there in the media. So
yeah, but
that's my take on it.
The question is, what's the difference? If you go for it there and you don't get it, they get the ball at the 47, you still have to get a stop.
Yeah, but you're gambling on half a field versus a full field. That could be the difference between a touchdown, a field goal, or no points.
Still a one-score game, regardless of what they do. They go down there and they score 6. It's an 8-point game. It's still one possession. And I'd rather. I don't see any reasoning behind what Mark Stoops did. I knew at the time he was going to punt it, like we said. I don't. It doesn't make any sense, honestly. Even the best thing that could have happened was your defense got a 3-and-out, and you would have gotten the ball back on your 30 with no timeouts, with maybe like a minute 40, minute 30. I didn't trust that offense to go 70 yards in a minute and 30. We got a quarterback that we don't really trust, that he didn't trust earlier in the game to throw the ball, out of bounds or in the end zone with 9 seconds left to make sure we got that field goal in. So you're telling me you trust him in that aspect, but not to do that? It just doesn't – I don't see the positives of punting the ball there unless you punt it and get it down on the 1, and you could go all out for a safety. That would have been the only. And if you're planning on punting it at the 1, as a former college punter, getting it on the 1 is pretty hard. Very, very hard, especially with gunners. Normally, gunners do not have the best of hands for the most part. So getting it down at the 1, and then even then, you're talking about selling out for a 2-point play. It's I don't agree with it at any point in the imagination.
In fairness to Mark here, we've already discussed this on the podcast. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of trust with Brock in trying to make that final play. There's also the keynotes we were making earlier that the defense was playing pretty darn good throughout the game. If we're trusting the defense to hold them the length of the field versus half a field, I think that may have been the thought process that was going into it. Again, in heat of the moment, you're making a split decision. You're going with your gut instinct, the first gut instinct that comes. You're not usually making, a full debate about this after the game like we are right now. You're going the heat of the moment. Hey, this is what sounds good. Let's go ahead and go with this. Our defense has been playing well. They're going to have to drive the length of the field. We'll see what happens. I think that's the decision there. So to your point, but why don't we put a pin in that for now? I think there's two sides of it. But let's go ahead and jump into next week's game here. We're going to be playing the Ohio Bobcats here. We're favored to win this. We have an 88.5% chance of winning according to the matchup predictor on ESPN. Obviously, we're going to be favored to win this game big time. What are your thoughts going into the Bobcats game here? I have us winning, obviously. I'll let you break it down first, though.
Yeah, first off, we want to score an offensive touchdown. It's been 8 quarters of football, and we haven't scored a touchdown in the past 8 quarters. So looking forward to getting the offense, like we had said earlier, kind of, I don't want to say treat it as a scrimmage game, but kind of, have it, try things out that you're kind of too afraid to against Georgia. You're too afraid to against South Carolina because of, the freak athletes that they have, the 5 stars that they have coming off the edge, the freak athletes. Ohio doesn't have those freak athletes. Look at my co-host. He's not a freak athlete by any means, and he went to Ohio U. So, those are the type of guys that we're working against here. You want to be able to, get some continuity with this offensive line. We've been able to establish the running game. I want to be able to establish the passing game. I would like to throw the ball 30-plus times in this game to just force Brock to become comfortable, force him to become, mesh with his teammates, become a leader. I was talking to somebody during the game. Brock is always in the back of those team huddles. He's not the, 2 minutes left in a game, you're a Tom Brady fan, everybody surrounding Tom Brady, he's in the middle of that huddle telling everybody what to do. With Brock right now, he's on the outside of the huddle kind of looking in, letting somebody else take control. I want to see him take leadership, start to grow into his own. Hopefully this Ohio game is what gets him rolling.
Yeah, I think you bring up some good points. First of all, we're going to address that shot you just took at me. I do not appreciate that. First of all. Second of all, I'm a much different person now than I was when I was in college. So I want you to hop off on that. But getting back to the game here, look, I think you're right. I think this is an opportunity for us to really reset. We really need to focus in. I think personally, and I know this is probably not going to happen. There's a reason why I'm not a college coach. There's a reason why I'm not coaching in the SEC or any level for that matter. But if I'm thinking of a game plan going into this game against the Bobcats, and we, on paper, and I say this with a grain of salt because I know what just happened with the Gamecocks game, I'm going in with some really aggressive play styles to really break the ice on some of the things that we've been messing up on. I think this is the opportunity you go into, and you understand that you're going to make some mistakes, but you're going to learn so much from it, and you still have the opportunity to walk out with a convincing win. I'm not saying to go in with that mindset. Again, I would never tell the team like that, but as a coaching staff in the office, as we're talking about the game plan, I'm telling my offensive coordinator saying, hey, we really need to get this quarterback some confidence. Let's throw in some big plays, some flashy plays. Let's get them on ESPN highlights. Let's do something to get this game on the map because Kentucky football offense finally scored a touchdown. Not just one, not just 2, 5 or 6 touchdowns. We're an SEC team going against the Ohio Bobcats. Alma mater, love them. I hope we destroy them. I think that's the expectation in Kentucky football going in. This is the game we should beat them. fine. I'll make my prediction now. 35-0 should be the minimum score going into that game. I think we have the talent on offense and defense to do it. I don't see any other reason why we don't have a dominant win like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. My prediction, I was going to say 34, so we're about right on line. I think Alex Rayner decides, he's going to get that right foot into some of this action here. I think it's going to be 34-10. I think, this defense is so good. This defense is elite. But I feel like most of the time, elite defenses, they'll have a mental lapse or whatever. I think that'll be how they end up getting that 10 points. Probably one mental lapse defensively to get that 7. And then unfortunately, with all these shots that we're talking about, all these different play calls, I can see, one turnover on our end resulting in 3 points for them. But I'd love to see, like I said, I won at least 4 touchdowns out of this offense, get that score to 34-10. I think we're walking away from this game feeling pretty good. It's crazy, this time last week, we were hitting the panic, hitting the alarms, hitting the sirens. Everything felt lost. We were talking about, struggling to get to 6 wins, all of this. Now, you come in, you take care of business at Ohio, and then you give yourself a chance to knock off a top 5 team in Ole Miss the week after. Don't want to look forward to that game, obviously. Maybe Georgia just did that against us. They play Bama this week coming up. So maybe they did that. We don't want to do that as well. But, get the offense clicking in time to go for the game in Oxford.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, like I said earlier, I think this is the start for a run that we can potentially make to get ourselves into a playoff contention. I think we can do it. We can start. It starts with the Bobcats. We take some shots. I do like your points. Would love to see the field goal. I'd love to just see touchdowns and 2-point conversions, but we'll take field goals and extra points as well. We'll get the kicker involved with it. Obviously, with some aggressive play calling. Might be a couple turnovers. Hopefully not, but we'll see what happens. I think our defense is strong enough, though. I think if everything goes smoothly, if everything goes correct, obviously I think we'll win dominant in this game. Hopefully that gives us a confidence boost as we go into some tougher games down the stretch, which will set us up really nicely for the long haul here. So, anything else you want to add into what you want to see for this upcoming game?
No, it's a noon kickoff, Parents Weekend in Lexington. I know noon kickoffs is kind of hard to tailgate for that game, but want to see the fans come out, fill Kroger Field. This team left it all on the field last week. Show them support. Bring your parents to the game. Go tailgate. Show out at the Ohio game. Let's get this team rolling, feeling good, heading into Oxford next week.
Sir. Wildcats Nation, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Tyler Britton. This is your host, Cameron Johnston. We're here on the Cats Talk podcast every single week talking about Cats football, breaking down the wins, the losses, the goods, the bads. Tune in every single week to see what's coming next. Please, if you haven't done so already, give us a like on Spotify here. Give us a 5-star rating wherever you're listening. Share with your friends. Share with your family. Let us know let people know what we're doing. We're going to be here every single week, and we need your support. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Go Big Blue.